I tell anyone who wants to be a podcaster the same thing others have recommended. First, find a niche you're passionate about and willing to be immersed in. A quote by Sandra Seeley. She's an author of Chronicles of a Sea Woman. And welcome to Mirror Your Magnificence. I am Carol T. Wilkinson. My guest, my guest, Dr. Tami Patzer, shares how we can be a six-figure podcast guest and use podcasts for marketing our big message and big mission for impact, influence, and income. Dr. Tami Patzer is an expert in many media platforms. She is a best-selling author, Pulitzer Prize nominated journalist, award-winning podcast and radio show, and creator of the trademark Beyond the Bestseller Marketing System and the Daily Success Media Network. And it is my pleasure to welcome Dr. Tami Patzer. Dr. Tami, why is podcasting an important platform?
Podcasting is a really important platform because if you look at how people are communicating, podcasting or live streaming with the video, can really help you to grow your audience. And the cliche many people use is the know, like, trust factor. But now many people understand what that means. And so when you are consistent with podcasts, you can actually keep appearing and give people really valid information, knowledge, edutainment, and that will actually help you to grow a really solid foundation, especially if you leverage it.
And for some of us that don't understand or know why, what is the difference between having a webcast and a podcast?
Well, traditionally, a podcast, think back, I don't even know how many years now. I remember iPods. That's when people started talking about podcasts because we made the transition from what they call terrestrial radio over the airwaves to carrying around a little device where we could listen to things, and podcasting was born where the average person, if they had a recording system and a microphone, they could actually start doing shows, and then people listening on their podcast and then later their phone could actually listen to all of this, let's call it non-professional, but that's not a proper word. It means that the average person now has a voice. The difference between a podcast traditionally is it's audio only. Webcasting is another step up, and that is when, like what we're doing here is a webcast, because you can see us. You can see the expression on my face. You can feel my energy. You can see you. And so that's a webcast. And in my opinion, use webcasting or video podcasting as the foundation. Later, you can strip the audio out and put it on the non-video platforms. But if you actually have a show that is done in video and in audio, now you actually have what would be equivalent of what some people might call an online TV show.
I see. Interesting. So then we can leverage both of them, correct, in promoting our business or our message, correct?
Yes, and why I like webcasting and podcasting so much is, again, it can be recorded, it can be live, like we're live right now. So people, if they wanted to interact with us, they could, or it could be recorded, and it's just something that you can also transcribe. So the way that I my big claim to fame is that I had a podcast and I was not making any money. And I had this big conversation with God. Dear God, give me an idea so I can make money. And my idea was turn my podcast interviews into books.
Wow.
And I put that out on Facebook. And that was a Saturday morning. By Sunday afternoon, I had 64 women raising their hands saying, I want to be in your book. And then I said, great, you get to be on my podcast. And that's how I was able to shift that idea that all podcasts are free, because that's something that what I call gurus have put out there. So people think, oh, it's free, it's free. But the truth is, to make it a win-win-win for everybody concerned, everybody needs to share the podcast. For example, you did a really good job of promoting this interview beforehand. Here we are. Now we need to do a really good job of promoting it after the fact. And I'll skip to the six-figure podcast guest part, because people need to understand it isn't about doing a bunch of interviews. It's really about using each and every interview you do and leveraging that so that you can attract more clients and customers to you. It's not like a snap of the finger, one and done. It's like, I should take this interview with you and leverage it. For example, I write press releases about my interviews, put those out and distribute those. If I put this video into my press release, it'll go out to hundreds of other places and it'll build that online footprint. Every podcast, every webcast should help you build that online footprint so that when people say, well, who are you? They can look you up and go, oh, that's who she is. So that's really important.
And then it would enable others to want to get on someone's podcast or my webcast, correct? That's one good way of getting guests.
Right. Yes, again, I like to always talk about both sides of the mic. I actually have Podcast Club on the Be Connected network, which is a webcast broadcast network, Podcast Club, and I talk about being on both sides of the mic. So if you're a podcast host and you're looking for good guests, you, of course, want to promote that you're out there and that you are looking for guests and tell people who is your ideal guest. So then, of course, people will come to you and say, hey, I think I'd be a great guest. If you want to be the podcast guest, you need to take a little time and do some research and make sure that you are a good guest. And everyone should create, at a minimum, they should have a nice headshot of themselves that the guest or the host could use. They should have a set of questions that they would like to answer. The host is not obligated to use those questions, but if you give them, at least they have a clue about what you could talk about with expertise. And then you also should have an opt-in or a giveaway. For example, I have a couple opt-ins that I really like to give away. And it's like, well, which one? And so, it's always good to have that option of I have this or I have this, or I could talk about podcasting. I could talk about, oh, you want to be on TV? Here's a way to turn these podcast guest experiences into being a great TV guest. Because if you're doing webcasts where you're actually on camera, you can learn a lot about your hand gestures, like I'm a hand talker, about your facial expression, about your energy, and how to convey that energy, because video is flat. So you really have to try to make yourself more 3D when you're on television or on a webcast. And of course, in a traditional podcast with voice only, you have to convey all of that with your voice. you have to convey all the excitement, that expertise and that knowledge just with your voice in a traditional podcast.
Love that. Really love that. I mean, I'm learning a lot from you today. How do we monetize it? How do we become that six-figure guest?
So monetizing podcasts, from the guest perspective, it really is all about choosing the topic that is going to attract the people you want to attract, your ideal client or customer. And then how do you capture that information? You have to give them something of value in order to start that communication process. The big mistake many people make is they don't ever offer anything. They might say, oh, go to my website.
Yeah.
Well, people go to your website and there's so much there, they get lost. Or it could be, let's do a discovery call. Well, a lot of people are afraid of discovery calls because they think, uh-oh, that's the buzzword, meaning they're going to try to sell me something. So the easiest way to start the path to becoming a six-figure guest is come up with something that your potential clients and customers want, some type of an opt-in, a checklist, a giveaway of some sort. So all you're asking them for normally is maybe their name, like first name and their email, or sometimes you might ask for their telephone number because then you could text them. And all of this, with great power comes great responsibility. So you're not going to spam them, but you make your opt-in have a way for them to connect with you in another way. For example, I use a system called Podia, and I can send something to people free, but then it'll say, hey, would you like a paid consultation? And it costs this much. Would you like this course? But I don't put like 25 of them. I have two options, a short paid consultation or a course that is a deeper dive, but none of them are really expensive. They're just, gives them an opportunity to go, I'd really like to dig into this. And then, of course, you can send them emails and you develop that relationship either through emails or text messages. And if you're a coach, a speaker, it all helps you to grow your audience so that you'll attract more people who want to be your clients and customers. That's how it grows. And again, back to that leverage, it's not about, oh, I'm going to go out and do 500 podcast interviews. It's really about selecting the right shows for you. And again, that can be the right podcast, meaning audio only, or the right webcast, and then leveraging that by transcribing it, because I'm sure that most of us, we say these really magnificent things that we don't even know that we said. And one of the biggest issues for many of us is we think everybody knows what we know. And what we discover is, no, that's why they're listening to us, because they don't know what we know. And that's our gift that we're giving. And like yours is mirror your magnificence, for example. Well, we have our gifts that we have to give. And again, to become that six-figure podcast guest, we have to make a plan so that you're not just willy-nilly, throwing a bunch of spaghetti against the wall, but you have a plan, but also respect the host. The host is giving you their time, their audience. You want to help them as much as you possibly can by sharing with your audience so that their list also grows and yours grows. So everybody's, growing together and blossoming together. I think that's really important because I've met a lot of podcast guests who it's all about them. That it's like, oh, what can the host give me? Not about, well, what can be the mutual give and take so that both of us win. And it's really important, again, who's really important? The audience.
Yes.
The audience is who we're trying to give information to so that they can make intelligent decisions about, well, is podcasting for me? Could I make money? Should I be a guest? Should I be a host? I mean, I personally think that everybody should have their own show. And because then you're in control and you can do solo, or you can have other experts in, borrow other people's credibility. So there's just podcasting and webcasting, to me, it's a low barrier of entry. Really, what do you need? You need internet, you need a camera, and you need a microphone. But to get started, you have to kick perfection to the door. Because if you go, oh, I have to have this, I have to have this, I have to, look a certain way, I'm too fat, I don't like this, you're going to never get started. And so you just won't ever have any opportunity. But if you say, you know what, I'm going to just, for example, I'm going to do a Facebook Live today. I'm going to just, comb my hair, do something, but I'm going to give people 3 tips or 1 tip. One problem, one solution is always good. And then say, hey, if you want more information, go here, get this. And you could have something simple. The other day, I made up the top 10 questions to make a transformative interview that if you actually went through and did the 10 questions, you could make a really nice interview that would help your audience have a transformation, at least take that first step of a transformation, which is what we're all trying to help people do, is have, transformation as the end goal.
As you gave such great information, Dr. Tami, but I have one more.
Okay.
On your path of speaking with people, do you find that more people are inhibited to do Facebook Lives versus the podcast and the webcast?
I don't really know. All I know is that it doesn't matter if it's Facebook Live, if it's podcasting, if it's public speaking, if it's recorded. Many people there, and this is, there are tests or statistics on this. What are people afraid of? Biggest fear, public speaking. Mm. So if public speaking is one of your biggest fears over death, which I know how people feel, because before I went to Toastmasters to learn how to get over what I call the teeth chattering jitters. I wanted to get a job where I was talking on stage to this group when I worked for the newspaper. This was the late 90s. And I was practicing in the mirror. I literally shook like this and my teeth were chattering. I had such fear of people seeing me and listening to me, and that I went to Toastmasters, and the first speech I ever gave, they counted 39 ums, because again, I was terrified. And as time went by, everything just kind of morphed. And I'd say that even though I've been public speaking heavily since 2009, I really didn't grasp my confidence until probably 2016. And that was when I met Sharonada. She's a really cool person and she introduced me to WPN, Women's Prosperity Network, that I actually blossomed or came out of my shell. And so if people are afraid to speak on Facebook or on podcasts. I think if you're looking for, well, where would I start? You might want to start with a podcast where it's just audio and nobody can see you. Here's something that I've done very successfully for marketing: make slide videos. So you take your beautiful headshots of you and do the one question, one answer, or one solution. And instead of doing a live, you make the slide video, and that way all you have to worry about is speaking, and you do it very short, a minute to 2 minutes long, and then like have 20 questions, frequently asked questions, should ask questions. Boom, now you've got 20 to 40 videos, or made out of slides that could be mini podcast episodes, and they all have a call to action. That would be like really cool. And then you take those questions and you could turn those into a book. So now you've got a book answering all these questions. You've got the slide videos, and then you work on the confidence, because most people want to be on the stage. I always visualized myself on the stage, and my very first big talk in front of 1,000 people was out in San Diego with Mike Koenig's group. And the slide says, "I am a success story," because that was the vision. I had went to one of his events, and they said, "Well, if you can prove that you're successful, with checks and all that, we'll put you on this stage." And so it was like, I'm going to do that. And it was about 8 months later, I was on that stage in front of all those people, talking about my success story. I had 15 minutes on the stage, and I did that. And ever since, I've just been go, go, go from there. I mean, it's a slow process, but just do it. Don't worry about perfection. Like, I can't sing, and sometimes my voice is better than other voices. Toastmasters is a great way to get over that. Just practicing being on shows is a good way to do that. And pretty soon, the more practice you do, the more natural it becomes.
Yes. So even with this, and as you're talking, you can repurpose and do all this different ways of repurposing, and then turn it into a monetizing situation.
Yes.
Dr. Tami, today you showed us how you mirror your magnificence. And you know what? I got so lost in all your information. Did we tell the audience did you tell the audience how we can connect with you?
The best way is, and I think it's going to be in the links in the show notes, I actually have a really cool gift for everyone, and that is the top 10 transformational questions, and add in your mind and answers that you can do as both a podcast guest and a podcast host. Because if you can define your talk for a podcast interview with all your talking points, you can make a really good transformational interview. So opt in for that. And I know it's in the show notes. And of course, you can always friend me on Facebook at Tami Patzer. Thank you.
Well, thank you again, Dr. Tami. Mirror Your Magnificence is about making a difference, inspiring and reflecting magnificence. And I'm Carol T. Wilkinson. Visit my website, mirroryourmagnificence.com, and mark your calendar for October 21st, where I'll be doing my online workshop at 3 o'clock. And it's about how to recognize and turn your negative emotions into a positive one. And I'll see you next Monday at 11 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time. And you have a magnificent day.